This is Power Athlete Radio. With your hosts, Denny K, Professor Booty, and the Luke Summers. And now, toes forward, hips locked, shoulders set, and retract those scapulars. It's time for some knowledge bombs.
Thanks for tuning into Power Athlete Radio. This week, we welcome the dynamic father and son duo of Olympic weightlifting, coaches Mike and Beau Burgener. When you hear the name Burgener, your mind probably refers to two things: the Burgener Snatch warm-up and, of course, CrossFit weightlifting, the international specialty seminar for coaches and athletes looking to enhance their understanding of the snatch and clean and jerk. But what you might not know is that this family has been steeped in the sport for decades. Even their home in San Diego is also the site of Mike's Gym, a mecca for Olympic lifters. Athletes come far and wide to drop in for this unique coaching experience in the two-car garage of Chateau de Burgener. In this episode, you'll get a breakdown of the CrossFit weightlifting seminar, as well as Mike and Beau's expectations of attendees. Furthermore, we'll hear how their ideas of how to perfect the sport have evolved over time, even some philosophies that have changed as a result of training with John. Also, hear some of the biggest coaching flaws when instructing the snatch and clean and jerk. Mike, a former Marine, says he'll run his groups like a drill sergeant. Having been coached by both he and Beau, I can attest to not only their commanding demeanor, but their expectation of excellence. Effort is always assumed, of course, but you just can't help but want to impress them when you're training with them. This is episode 115.
What's happening, Power Athlete Nation? Welcome to another episode of Power Athlete Radio. This is Denny. I'm here with Tex, Luke, Callie, John, and Bobby. And today our guests are Beau Burgener and his father, Mike Burgener. How you doing, gentlemen? Thanks for taking the time to join us.
Doing great. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, doing great. Thank you.
I got to admit, I'm a little nervous on this one.
So am I.
Maybe we could just kind of, usually the way the show goes, we kind of like, okay, if you could tell us a little bit about your journey. I don't think we need to do that with you guys. If our listeners don't know who you are, we have some problems. So maybe we can just you could just kind of give us a little like brief summary of what like a CrossFit weightlifting seminar kind of begins with. And what I mean by that is like the CrossFit football one is very kind of performance oriented, purposeful movement, orthopedically sound. We try to emphasize posture and position. So when it comes down to like movement execution, I'm sure that you take a specific approach to that as well. And maybe we can just kind of start with a little bit about what you like to reinforce.
Yeah,
or Coach B.
Yeah, I'll start it out. You know, the weightlifting seminar has goals and objectives, and the goal of our class is to teach coaches and trainers, how to teach safely, efficiently, and effectively the snatch, the clean, and the jerk. And, we try to do it with the fundamentals of teaching, which are what we call the stance, the grip, and the positions. And then we break it down into drills. And the real thing we try to emphasize is that we want to simplify the simple. And, it's very detail-oriented, and we break it down from top to bottom, and then we build it back up again.
Yeah, we talked a little bit before the show about one of the things that we do as coaches at these specialty seminars is try to make the information accessible to the coaches in a way that they can implement like as soon as they leave. And so it's one thing to just flood them with information or coaching cues or progressions, but if they can't put it all together and they can't coach it, then it's kind of a waste of time, and it's just like sort of more of like a coach's clinic type thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of the things we do is we take different breakout sessions, and we start at the very basics, which are the fundamentals, and that's going to be the stance, grip, and position. And then everything that we do for the remainder of the course is going to progress from there. We're taking the complex movements of a snatch and clean and jerk and then simplifying it into different drills that are not only easily performed, but they're also easily coachable. And, you know, our mindset is, how are we going to expect you to perform a snatch or a clean and jerk if you can't do the simple drills that make up the snatch and the clean and jerk, you know, spot on. So the way that, you know, I like to break my courses down is each breakout, you know, we'll have an instructional piece, and then a performance piece, a coaching piece, and then we'll end it all up with the review. So that way they're getting educated, they get to go through it themselves, then they have a chance to coach it, you know, get the cobwebs out, then we bring them all in, we hit some review points, any points that I, you know, need to address walking around, and then we move on.
Yeah. Do you, Coach B, do you find that people are reluctant to coach each other at the seminars?
You know, in my seminars, you know, they know what the goals and objectives are. You know, we teach that whole thing, and we do a video and showing, you know, my daughter-in-law, Natalie Burgener, we show her performing a snatch, and we talk about, you know, what that person is seeing, and then we say that you are here for coaching. That's our goal. Our goal is to have you coach somebody else. And we give them the breakout session scenario, like Beau just said, and, you know, most of the people that are there, they know that through what is put on the CrossFit website, what the goals and objectives are. And they're more than happy to, you know, try to develop that coaching eye to, you know, to be able to take it back to their box and work it out.
Coach, you know, when you have somebody at the seminar and you notice that they tend to overcoach the lifts, where they're throwing out too many cues for their lifter, what are some of the things that you would say to a person, to a coach doing that?
You know, that happens all the time, because a beginner wants to overcoach. It's like that lecturer that comes up and he's got a 30-minute lecture going on, and it takes him 10 minutes to get it over with because he's so nervous. And so my one comment to them is that the less a coach says, the better off you are. So and we get them to look at the lifter, and when they're doing the movement, from either the 3/4 side in front, the half side right beside them, you know, side by side, and then a 3/4 place in the back, and we show them what to look for. And to just give one-word cues, a one-word cue or a 3-word cue is much better than 2 or 3 sentences, and they handle that pretty well.
What's just out of curiosity, what's the demographic breakdown? Do you guys get so in terms of attendees, do you get mostly CrossFit athletes, CrossFit coaches? Do you guys ever get someone who is not a CrossFitter come to your seminar, which we occasionally get, and we look at them as like, you know, like a diamond in the rough almost, because they've never really been coached on these things, and so it's sort of like a blank slate. So what are the types of athletes that come to your seminar?
Well, the people that come to our seminar, 90% of them are CrossFit coaches. And, you know, the other demographics would be, you have a CrossFit athlete that wants to perfect his technique. Maybe there's not a CrossFit coach in his area, so he wants to learn the fundamentals of what the lifts are all about, which is interesting, because our program is exactly the same way I've coached a couple of Olympians. We just simplify it down to the CrossFit coach that's going to be coaching that beginning client that he has. But to take a normal weightlifter that is not involved in CrossFit, we get very few of those type of athletes. But we're thinking in the future that may be blasé, and that we are going to get those athletes that aren't CrossFitters that want that coaching eye developed and that coaching information.
Just a question for Beau. Who do you find to be the most coachable type of athlete versus, do you ever have someone come in sort of with an ego? I mean, I imagine at your seminar, they kind of get knocked down a peg or two. But But in terms of like either gender or age, do you guys you have people that are more coachable than others?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure it kind of goes around with every course, but it'd be, the female athletes for sure are the most easily coachable because they have no egos whatsoever, and they're open.
Yeah.
Yes, I think for the most part, you're kind of a anomaly on that one. But
so let's get a little crazier. What are some horror stories of athletes that have attended your seminar? We don't have to use real names or locations. We'll keep it anonymous. But do you have any horror stories?
Yeah, I hate coaching John Wellborn.
I knew you were gonna say that. I knew it.
Because he's a hack.
That Wellborn guy.
Well, you know what? The reason he doesn't like me is because he overcoaches. So Coach Pete will throw out 475 different cues in under 6 seconds.
No, he won't.
He does. You should see him. He's a terrible overcoacher, and he just doesn't like somebody that has a natural, clean pull like mine. I mean,
natural. What is it? Natural what?
Natural pull.
Oh, okay.
And the other thing is, I can teach Coach B and Beau's entire seminar with just one coaching cue. Finish your pull.
Oh my gosh.
Finish your pull.
You guys knew that it was gonna turn into this, right? Just a complete shit talking fest.
It's not my fault that they're both 5'7".
My God. But in a serious way, I mean, Beau, have you ever had someone where you like, this is a disaster, this is a train wreck, or anybody ever walk out on your seminar?
No, we've never had anyone walk out on a seminar. I think the biggest train wreck is, the average CrossFit athlete walking in who can snatch 100 kilos and thinks that's a really good snatch in whatever country they're in, and are walking around like they, have the biggest lift in a course that's meant to be taught to coaches. And, just how you deal with one of those is really by just doing your job, still coaching them. And the way that we coach, you might, up your game a little bit with the cues that you're giving them. They're going to be a little bit more simplistic than all the information you give the other athletes. But, all the evaluations that we get are spot on and how we're coaching. And, it is a tough one, but at the same time, what are you going to do? I'm not going to change my coaching style for, one bad apple versus, the 99 other people that are there to, learn the way we're coaching. So
we ask Beau because we attract some individuals from like the high school or collegiate strength and conditioning profession, and just the nature of that profession is very ego driven. So I know Callie and I have been on a seminar or two where we've had to like flip the script, do a good cop, bad cop routine, coddle, then break down, then coddle, just to get this guy to like, or person. It could have been a girl.
It wasn't, for the record.
But I had to get them to like open up and be receptive to the information. And what's so amazing is like, time is money and money is money. People are sacrificing weekends and time away from their family to come out to these things. And it's funny how at least it's kind of the worst of the worst in terms of our scenario. People just like totally shut off and disregard all the information that we're putting out there.
Yeah, and part of it too, to add context, Beau, is that when you're in the contact sport world, which these particular individuals were, they have very little interaction with female coaches. And I mean, I'm not trying to get on a soapbox, but that is ultimately what it came down to in this one scenario. And so that's when we butt heads with people. It's usually not over any of the content or anything like that. It's just the delivery, I guess, of the information or the way you say it or who's saying it. But yeah.
You know what, Kelly, not to get you off, but
Sure.
Early in the day when we first started these seminars, and it's hilarious that we've been doing our seminar for as long as we have, and Coach B's been doing it for many, many years longer than we have. But I think early on in the seminar, people came to almost check you out a little bit, or more importantly, try to check you and to kind of compare. And I think early on, we used to have people challenge us a little bit, and we got to the attitude where, our information not only needs to be the best information, we need to be able to convey it the fastest. And if you're going to try to challenge us, you better, not come with some bullshit, because we'll stomp you out real fast. And I think that attitude has been very, has has been good, and now here we are a bunch of years later. We don't really get that, but I always wonder if when Coach B started teaching this, I mean, he taught USAW seminars and has taught seminars for a long, long time, and being a school teacher since Little House on the Prairie was regularly running on the black and white TV. I wonder if early on, did you guys have some battles, Coach B, where people came to it and they were like, we're all about, this type of pole, and you guys are teaching this, and I mean, I'm sure you still get a little bit of that, but did you get any fight back early on?
No, it's amazing because when we started doing the CrossFit stuff, the CrossFitter would come in and they were hungry for information. And I could have told them to do the swing, throw it up and catch it in the air type situation, and they would have believed it. As the information gets out there a little bit more, and USA Weightlifting has increased their membership from 3,000 to 15,000, there's more coaches and more people out there that are teaching the Olympic lifts, and there might be some more disparity now than there was in the beginning. And and our simple thing is that there's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, and this is just our way. We found success with this way. We believe in this way. But you know what? There's other methods. There's a catapult method. There's the bang and go method. There's this method, because we're an individual sport. We're not that team sport orientation where you're working with 60 guys, at one time like a football player does. So our evaluations have been, through the roof good. But when we do get a poor evaluation, it's generally because the guy didn't get a T-shirt. Not because of the information that's been out there.
Yes.
We hear that all the time too.
Yeah, we want free T-shirts.
Very frequently. Well, in terms of you guys breaking down the movements and sort of doing assessments with athletes, what are some of the limiting factors mechanically that you see, inhibiting people's ability to pull well, to receive well? I mean, these are sort of cliche questions, but it's always good to hear a more professional take on these questions.
Well, let me start out, and then I'll let Beau do this. But we do this. The fundamentals of teaching are stance, grip, and position. And the stance and the grip are going to be individually oriented anyway. And we use a lot of eyeball methods, putting the person into the proper position. But the positions are ongoing. Through the snatch, you got the lift off from the floor to the first pull, then the first pull to the second pull, and then the second pull to the third pull, and then you finally, have the bar overhead or not. But the limiting factor, what we say is that in this order you have to have mobility, speed, and strength. And the mobility is the absolute thing that you have to have, and you've got to continue to work on a basis that's every day. Get yourself in that mobility, unless you're just gifted, and then Beau, go ahead.
Yeah, and kind of just piggybacking on that, the mobility is, the main aspect is going to be your receiving position, whether it be a snatch or a clean, and having a usable bottom position. And we're going to define usable as being a position that you're comfortable, flexible, and strong. And if we can get that bottom position usable, then that's going to carry over, night and day to you wanting to receive heavy weight in that position. If you're not comfortable in that position, then there's no way in hell you're going to go there when the weight starts to get heavy. And that's the exact reason why you see people power snatching more than they snatch, or power clean more than they clean, just because they haven't spent time there.
Yeah.
And then going on the speed aspect, if I could say there's one trick in Olympic lifting, is learning how to combine the extension with the flexion, and not sacrificing one for the other. The extension is going to create the speed through the middle on the barbell, and then the flexion underneath it is going to be that speed underneath the barbell. And learning to pick that up and learning how to pull yourself underneath the barbell into a position with speed and intensity is really something that's going to be more mental than anything else, once you are prepped and primed to go there with the mobility.
Sure. I've always struggled with the front rack position, mainly because my biceps are too big. I don't know if you run into that problem frequently, but
all the time.
It's the cross.
Beau never has. Bo
I
never
have the
has.
same problem.
Bo
I
never
have the
has.
same
Coach
problem.
B might have at one point, but Bo never has. Have you ever seen how skinny Beau Burgener's arms are?
Oh my God.
That's actually a compliment, John.
Well, it is. I mean, the poor guy. It's a perfect match circumference from his wrist all the way up to his shoulder. It looks like a tube.
Oh my God.
That doesn't seem true.
It is.
No one's gonna ever want to
best thing
be
Beau
a guest
Burgener-
on this.
Well, the best thing Beau Burgener ever did was come hang out with us. You know why? Because he got stronger and better looking.
I absolutely agree 100% with that one. And I wouldn't have agreed, 3 years or 4 years ago.
Yeah. I'll give you that, man. I'll give you that. I hit my last snatch PR after not snatching for 8 weeks after the conjugate method we did.
Yeah, our crazy ass fucking power athlete influence fucking craziness. You guys don't know that when we were testing a lot of the stuff you see on Power Athlete, it was Beau Burgener and I doing it because the only two people I know that could mentally, emotionally, and physically handle all this crazy shit was Beau and I. Everybody else shattered into a million pieces and wouldn't show up.
Weren't you guys cycling steroids though?
Oh!
Well, yeah. Well, we were actually just having a Russian guy come over and spit in our mouths, so it worked the same way.
Oh my God.
Yeah, one of my favorite quotes from Wellborn at that time was, we don't measure, we pour.
Oh my God. Nice.
True. I mean, dude, there was I'd come up with this stuff and I'd be like, hey, this we're gonna do tomorrow, and nobody would show up but Beau. And it wasn't, and I'll tell you, it was because Beau didn't have anywhere else to go. I used to call him like the what was it? What was the movie where it's like, I got nowhere else to go?
Yeah.
Officer and a Gentleman. It was Beau Burgener, Officer and a Gentleman. I got nowhere else to go.
Did you scoop him up like Officer and a Gentleman and like carry him out of the factory?
Of course. Well, actually, we were just, who was that? That wasn't Sidney Poitier. That was who was the black
Lou
guy
Gossett
from?
Jr. Lou Gossett Jr.
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, Beau was actually Lou Gossett Jr. and I don't know who I was, but it was kind of weird. He was doing a dual role at that point, but no, honestly, Beau is probably one of the best training partners you could ever hope for because he is fucking harder than any human being I've ever met because it's impossible to hurt him. And there was never anything where he's like, like, what do you think, like 100 reps at like 98% of your 1RM? We're like, yeah, no problem. How many hours do we have? 7. Good, let's go. Can we get a drink somewhere? Is there water in this, or can I get a food? All right, we're in. I mean, Coach, you remember you sent us over that small off stuff? I remember looking at it and being like, fuck. I was like, what are we not going to do it? I'm like, let's go. So he was good. And then the best is Nate and Ben and the other guys just wouldn't show up for days. And so I'll definitely give Beau Burgener as the hardest training partner you'd ever want.
Thanks, John. Appreciate that, man. Those are good times. Still think back about that all the time. Fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
Oh,
it was good.
That's adorable.
Oh,
usually,
a sincere moment.
Usually we wait till at the end of the show to share our feelings, but it's coming a little early.
John's got a single tear falling down his cheek, actually.
Yeah, I did. I'm sad.
Let's just wrap up kind of like the discussion on the mechanics because I think it's pretty keen what you said about combining extension with flexion, which is something that I see people sort of struggling with very frequently. And I always try to remind athletes that with as much power as you create to get full extension, you have to then reverse that power really quickly and get into a nice solid receiving position, which I think is just one of those things that once people start to put the pieces together, that's one of the last components in terms of just, I don't know, does that seem like a decent cue coming from two very professional lifting coaches?
Well, on my take on that kind of stuff is, you have your terminology that you use to try to get the athlete to, to perform the movements that you want them to perform. What's really interesting is that I'm really a visual learner and more of a visual coach than anything else. So I'll bring up video, I'll bring up posters, I'll bring up sequences of lifts to try to explain what the athlete is going to do. To me, it's that athlete that gets to that extension and can immediately transition and moving or sliding his feet out to that receiving position and learning to pull as his feet pull himself down and around the bar as his feet are moving. That gives him the speed. Now that is that extension and flexion. That is that pattern. Some people don't even understand extension and flexion, but you can show them on video, or you can show them on posters, and they get a better idea. And our concept of speed is, if you don't move your feet from that really powerful jumping position, as we call it, and receiving it out in that landing position, that you're not going to be able to generate that speed with heavy weight. Because we say, how can you pull a barbell up when you're off the ground? When those feet are sliding, you're really off the ground for a millisecond, but you can't pull that barbell up, but that slingshots your bar down underneath the bar.
Yeah, I mean, that makes perfect sense. And I think this is a good kind of way to segue to delineating like foot position, which we have obviously a big emphasis on toes forward. That's kind of our sport transfer to change a direction. That's the reason we kind of advocate that. I mean, we like to utilize the Olympic lifts for power and creating power on that vertical plane or vertical vector as it transfers to acceleration and all sorts of other things. But then we also just try to build in skill and movement patterning with the foot placement. So that's why we lean on that. And one thing that you guys said that I really liked about an athlete sort of naturally going where their feet or body allows them to move well. As a coach, when we look at certain things, first you have to ask yourself, okay, like, what is this athlete training for? And the second thing is, okay, now depending on where their body positioning is, I'm less concerned about the starting position and I'm more concerned about the mechanics that happen thereafter, right? So whatever position allows them to move the sexiest and move the safest and the most efficient, that's going to be kind of the position that we want to utilize. And I'm sure that, or I hope that maybe your stance is similar. Is that kind of your position in terms of, setup and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean,
Kelly, wait, hold on. I was just going to tell you this is a little backstory. Actually, it was when I first started the seminar, I hit up Coach B and we were talking about different power movements, and he's like, I don't know why you would have, football players or people that are playing sports really do full variances of the lifts. He's like, there's a lot of benefits, but at the end of the day, it's a longer pull, and you guys have heard me say that. And he's like, and nobody ever misses full extension with a power movement. And some of those early conversations that I had with Coach B really shaped what we did. And and I know his son, who is the baseball player, who I'm forgetting his name right now, followed CrossFit football for a time and was always a big thought that it had great carryover to what they were doing. So Coach B, having not only taught school but coached and played football and all that, I mean, understands this thing from both sides as an athlete, having trained athletes, and then also working as an Olympic lifting coach. So I mean, so I'm just going to preface with that. Go.
Well, for me, that the power position, you have to take a look at who you're coaching, and you got to take a look at the sport that you're coaching in. If I have a guy that can power snatch more than he can snatch, and he's a weightlifter, for me that's a mortal sin. I'm gonna get this guy into as long as he can do he's got the movement and the flexibility and the mobility to hit an overhead squat the right way, and he's still power snatching more than he can snatch, I'm not going to let him power snatch. I'm going to have that kid do full snatches, because I can always power snatch. The snatch pull, the power snatch and the snatch are exactly the same in my opinion. What ends up happening is the snatch is just simply a missed power snatch. So if I'm taking a football player and he's got all those other skills that he's got to work on, then it might be a different situation. Force times distance over time is exactly what power is. And you gotta take a look at the athlete. You gotta take a look at the mobility of the athlete. You gotta take a look at the speed and the amount of people you're working with at one time. So for me as a weightlifting coach dealing with only the weightlifter, I want that athlete to do full snatches all the time. As a coach that is involved with 60 athletes, in a football team, then I would like to have them do full snatches, but I'm not going to be as hard on them to do a full snatch as a power snatch, if that's what they're capable of doing, to generate that power. But I want them snatching, and I want them clean and jerking.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense for sure. And just to kind of lead into one of our next topics, do you guys think that in terms of the extension or the pull, that it's athlete specific? I mean, we hear a lot of things coming out of Olympic lifting, and we, like sexy kind of terms like, the catapult method, and triple extension is, of course, one of the most preferred methods. Do you guys have an opinion on these different lifting techniques?
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that, the goal of a snatch or a clean is to take the barbell from ground to overhead, as technically efficient as possible. And, when it's all said and done, there really is no differences in technique in snatches all around the world or cleans. The only difference is the style. And what you need to do is find the style that allows you to be most technically efficient when lifting the barbell. So, using the catapult method, which is, so commonly misconstrued, then any other term that we hear is really something that's just an argument between who's coaching you. We're all, no matter what coach you are, where you are, it's all about doing, the same thing, lifting the most weight overhead. And you might have different cues you're throwing out, but if you look at, pictures or videos, more or less it's all the exact same technique. It's just going to, be dependent and vary on who's giving you cues and feedback on a daily basis.
Yeah, one of the things I'm going to add on to that is that early on, when I was, a school teacher, I would talk about triple extension. I would talk about finish. And I remember, and I always tell this story at my courses, that I had a 15-year-old come up to me, and she said to me, "Coach, you're really confusing me by saying ankle, knee, and hip extension. Why don't you just say jump?" And, and I thought, jump, the problem with jumping is that the kids are going to think, how high am I going to jump? Am I going to stuff the basketball? But the idea is creating that double knee bend is what it is. That's all a jump is. And when you break down the catapult method, and you break down the Russian Polish method from the ground to that launch position or the hang position to that hip position I've done it frame by frame, and it all looks the same, 85% of the time. From that position, then if you're catapulting it, you're going to end up swinging it a little bit more, where the Russian method, we're going to keep it a little bit closer to the body. So, the bottom line is that you want to be able to coach the method that you believe in, but understand that if an athlete is going to bang the bar off the hips and he's still snatching 300 pounds, you keep your mouth shut. You don't, I would never try to change Rich Froning's technique in the snatch.
Right. I think that's such a good point, because it's like you said early on, it's about triaging the movement. And really the people who are nerdy and get wrapped around the axle with this stuff are probably, they don't have any business really getting into the technicalities of either the second pull or whatever. They really probably have quite a bit more strength to gain and more coordination. And so I think that's kind of like down the line of maybe your training maturity, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that, with there being so much information out there nowadays, and, being 20 different courses in Olympic lifting that you can take, people are just kind of information overload. They're going to one course and, they're being taught from scratch how to do the Chinese style lifting, and then 2 weeks later they're going to a Penlay course, and 2 weeks later, they're going to the USA weightlifting course, and then, wrap up that month, they're coming out to our course. And, I think that, I wouldn't say there's such thing as, over-learning, but I think the important concept to remember is it's all about experience and evidence-based learning. Taking what you've learned, applying it, and seeing what works for you, seeing what works for your athletes, and trusting the system. Don't be a program hopper. Don't be a technique hopper. Try something out. Spend a year or 2 years on it. If it's not working, hey, then change it up. But if you're trying to change up your technique every month, or, same thing with your athletes. If you're trying to coach them with different cues, every month after you go to a course, it's going to do nothing but confuse them.
Yeah, and the other thing that we sort of run into is along the same lines is, this is a question that I'm sure you guys get occasionally, which is what's the accessory work? And we know as coaches that there is really viable accessory work to the programs that we're providing, or the progressions that we put out there, or the techniques or whatever. There are great accessory components, and do you guys deal with that? And if so, what's your response? And like real answers for like real people who are that far along in O-lifting?
Well, the thing and this is what we do at our course, the Burgener warm-up and the skill transfer exercises for the Snatch basically are 10 exercises. And they're 10 drills that if you do that movement pattern every single day and you focus on the purpose of that exercise, like for the down and finish, the purpose of that is creating speed through the middle. And when we say and we teach the down and finish and we demonstrate the down and finish, the athlete that's demonstrating the down and finish, I will cue down and finish, and the athlete will say speed through the middle. And we found that when we make that athlete yell out the purpose of that drill, then they are much better at focusing on the movement pattern itself. And we find that the 10 exercises that they do daily, even with the PVC pipe, they can get the movement patterns down. And then when they go to a barbell and they're missing something like the down and finish, creating speed through the middle, they're not accelerating the bar, I can take that athlete out, put him over here on a lighter bar and work that movement pattern, and then bring him back into the group to create and focus that speed through the middle.
Yeah, and then kind of piggybacking on that, as you kind of said with the advanced athlete, I would say the most neglected part is the posterior chain. Right. And most accessory exercising that we're going to do with myself and advanced athletes is going to deal with developing a strong back, strong hamstrings. Heavy reverse hypers are my absolute go-to, my favorite. Heavy good mornings. The Russian lifters back in the day could good morning what they could 1 rep max clean. And if you think about that, if you put your numbers in your head, if you're a good morning 200 kilos, it's pretty
that's fucking unreal.
Pretty self-explanatory that it's going to feel like you don't need a bunch of other, you don't need a million different exercises. You need to work on what's effective, and that's having strong legs, strong back. And all good things happen from that. And if you look at a lot of the successful coaches, that's what they believe in. When we were raised up training, every training session we had back and abs. And if you look at West Side Barbell, they might have like a one movement they're focusing on that day, but then the rest of the 2-hour training session is all accessory work. It doesn't have to be all pre-planned out. It's just got to be just putting in the time and doing it.
Yeah.
One last point I want to make here, and I hate doing this, but it is the absolute truth. Before Beau went up to John's place, I would never, ever, ever allow any of my athletes to do the kind of work that John and Louis Simmons was doing. And it just didn't make any sense to me, because I'm the guy that's going, if you want to get better in the snatch, you snatch. If you want to get better in the clean and jerk, you clean and jerk. And you get the leg strong and you get the back strong. And we had our ways of doing that. However, but when Beau went up to John and they put this conjugate method to work, and Beau came back and he greatly improved in becoming an Olympic lifter. I went out to Casey Burgener, my son, who did snatch 400 pounds and clean and jerk close to 500 pounds. That is the guy that went out to Louis Simmons' place and took that powerlifting certification. And he came back knowing that if he would have done as a younger lifter, if he would have gone to John, or if he would have gone to Louis as a younger lifter, he would have been a much better Olympic weightlifter, because he knew the movement patterns, he knew he had the mobility, but it was hard for him to get the strength that he needed to be an Olympian that was going to medal.
Yeah, just developing that base level of strength, and there's some nuance there in prioritizing like when in your lifting career that's important. And we always kind of say like during that right after sexual maturation occurs, when testosterone is really at its heights, then you can really utilize that and turn it around into some serious raw strength. And Coach B, I really liked what you said about, you know, the way you kind of organized that group and had the athletes reiterate the purpose of, you know, whatever drill you're asking them to do, and they vocalize it so that they can then internalize it. And I think that most people who've been to your seminar can say that you have a really good commanding presence of a group. And I know that Tex does a lot of work with teams and kind of developing that relationship with teams and a presence with teams. And, you know, Tex, did you want to touch on anything in terms of the transfer from the seminar and working with a big group of athletes?
So just to kind of get a good idea that people come to us to learn how to lead groups. If they're an individual that's got to command 30 to 50 high schoolers or kind of 30 collegiate athletes, they come to us for that help. And that's the only experience I really have as a coach, is working in a team environment. So my questions are athlete management from an individual sport like Olympic weightlifting. I know most of the time people joke about if you're coaching an individual, you're more or less a therapist half the time. So I'm just curious about kind of your approach to an individual of keeping them receptive day in and day out, focus on the task at hand, and if there's any difference in commanding them for or preparing them for competition versus day in and day out training.
You know, that's a great question because every athlete is different. And before the show, I was talking a little bit about one of my athletes that was a national champion, was an absolute head case. And she was an individual. If I yelled at her, she would break down. If I was too nice to her, she would break down. And, you know, I had to learn to adapt my coaching methods to her. I had to learn to be able to, at times, be more sympathetic to her, and at times be a little bit harder, you know, with her. But the best job of coaching that I ever did was when she won a national championship. She was extremely nervous, extremely hyper, and I put a white towel over her head and made her listen to classical music. And then there's going to be an athlete like a Donnie Schenkel, who's a former Marine. I'm a Marine. If I did that to him, he would be a roaring, it just drive him crazy. So I could take Donnie Schenkel and yell at him and really get into his face, and it would motivate him. So you got to take a look at the athlete, and you got to be able to adjust your style to that athlete to give him the most success. I'm a Marine, I'm hardcore, I'm going to own the group. My group is taught like a drill instructor. That's the way I do things. But within that group, there's going to be athletes that are intimidated by that, and you got to back off that method. And then there's going to be athletes that need that, and you got to upgrade that method. So you got to take your style of coaching, and you got to adapt it to get the best out of the athlete or the team that you're coaching.
Yeah, and you know, I think this kind of goes along with your philosophies on training as well, not just communication with your athletes, but how you sort of conveyed that when Beau went and trained with John, for instance, your evolution and your approach to incorporating new tools and maybe, you know, utilizing some more powerlifting type of ways to get strong, that you know, evolved your perception of how you can train for this individual sport or train for Olympic lifting. And you know, I think that you, in all of your years' experience, I mean, have seen a lot of changes in terms of just strength and conditioning in general. You know, what are some of the biggest trends you've seen come and go, and what are the things that, you know, that maybe you used to utilize that you maybe don't incorporate so much? You know, what's that process been for you as an athlete and then eventually as a coach?
Well, you know, the time that I started coaching, or actually started lifting, it was at Notre Dame. You know, we did a clean and press, we did a snatch, and then we did a clean and jerk. You know, and then you had the sets of 5 sets of 5. You had the sets of the 20 rep squats. And you know, you evolutionize what's going to be best for the athlete. You know, if I had an ideal world and I had the strength of the athlete that I could coach, my basic philosophy would be the Bulgarian method. I would snatch, I would clean and jerk, I would front squat, and I would work on my weaknesses. That's what I would really like to do. But in all of my years of coaching, since, I've been in this sport for 50 years. In all of my years of coaching, I've never been able to do that, the way that I'd want to do it. And at 69, I've had to learn, and I keep learning all the time. I mean, John's situation was a perfect example. I'm a guy that's structured in snatch, clean, and jerk, and front squat more than anything else, and that's what I want to do. But if I keep doing that and I neglect the posterior chain, if I neglect back squats once in a while, if I neglect, the weaknesses at certain positions, then I'm not doing my athletes the best that I can do for them.
Yeah, and, Beau, I've got a question in terms of you guys' home down in San Diego. How did it become such a mecca, and how has that sort of changed over time? I mean, people come from essentially like far and wide to drop in, what is it, like Wednesdays or something, and drop in and get a little bit of the experience. How's that kind of come about?
Yeah, Dad can give you a little bit more of the background, but that gym was put in there from before I remember. But if I'm off base here, is my dad was a school teacher, and spending all his time at school and then coaching athletes after school, he wasn't able to see us as kids. So my mom, being the great mom she is, was willing to put a gym in their garage. And what would happen is my dad would come home from school, and we would have coaching or practice sessions just like any other sport in our garage. And as little kids, that's what we saw. People would come up to practice, or it's just Olympic lifting practice that took place at our house, and we wanted to be part of that. So we, 4 or 5 years old, we'd run in, do a couple lifts, and then go out by the pool and mess around for a little bit, come back and do the same thing. And then around 8 or 9 years old is really when we started to take a passion for the sport, just because it was what we were exposed to at a young age, and we wanted to be good at it. So, at that time, my dad was still lifting. So, throw us all in the back of the truck. We'd, fly off to Venice Beach for the weekend, or drive up to Venice Beach for the weekend and do our weightlifting contest. So, we were entering contests at 4 and 5 years old.
Wow.
And to see, how that developed. And for the next, 15 years, I went into a, competitive streak where, went to national championships and won a national championship. And the people that would be in our gym, Monday through Thursday and Saturday morning was really a core group, 5 or 6 guys that would be in there, and ladies. And then there'd be the, 20, 25 people that would come in and out throughout the remainder of the year. But the Saturday training sessions were always the big one. And those Saturday training sessions have now transitioned into Wednesday training sessions, because we're, teaching the courses on the weekend. So, kind of where it's at now is that, Wednesday is as long as we're in town, Wednesday is an open gym up at Mike's gym. You can you come on up, and it's taught just like our Saturday sessions were taught back in the 90s. And it's, just having fun, lifting weights, coaching each other, and, having a good time.
That's great. It's such a nice, nothing really can describe that camaraderie experience. And I'm sure it's just got years and years of memories, and lots of interesting people dropping in and out. And speaking of, the family element, Coach B, I know you were in Washington, D.C. recently, and you ran into, on the street, was it on the street, Bobby?
Yeah, so I was having coffee in District Donut. One of my friends owns a donut shop right across the street from Marine Barracks, Washington. And I was having a cup of coffee in there, and I saw Cody and Coach B and his wife walking by, and I just popped my head out the door to say hello. And ended up having a good conversation. And I think Coach B realized when I had stopped and asked him how long they were going to be in town, and if he had some time on Friday night. I think I probably saw them around Thursday. If they had some time on Friday night, if they wanted to attend Sunset Parade, which is the Marine Corps Silent Drill Platoon, performs a Sunset Parade every Friday evening during the summertime. And so, I knew that he was a Marine, and I knew that he'd probably get some enjoyment out of it. And he had said that he had seen him in the past, but had never really seen him at the base. So it was a cool opportunity. I have a really great friend who's a captain who just had his change of command, but was able to pull some strings, and we made that happen. And I think they had a fantastic time, which was great. And Coach B sent me a really nice email afterwards, and it was a good experience. It was great to bump into people. The last time I had met Coach B was out at the games last year in California, so it was good. It was a good time.
Nice. Coach B, did you like the summer drill?
Oh, are you kidding me? Marines love that kind of stuff, and it just basically gives you goosebumps when you see that kind of discipline and the motivation and the command presence of the Marines that were there and that were leading us into our seats. It was deja vu from 1970s, when I was a Marine. So it was an outstanding experience. The whole family loved it.
So I want to kind of lead to an inevitable part of the show that we like to talk about, and we're always curious to see where people derive their motivation, their inspiration, whether it be for coaching or lifting themselves or whatever. I know we asked you guys to provide a playlist. I'm not going to have you go through that, but I am curious if you guys have favorite movies or favorite speeches or anything like that kind of gets you going for whether it be a competition or motivation, inspiration type thing. So, Beau, take it away.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say anything too much in particular. As far as movies go, I'd say classics, favorites, Top Gun, Fight Club, Snatch, Dumb and Dumber, kind of round out the top. I'm kind of hold a lot of stuff inside, just use my own mental psyche and able to pump down whenever I need to, and don't really rely on external factors in order for that to happen too much, So I wouldn't say any tricks or anything in particular.
Yeah, for me, I think one of the greatest movies that I've ever seen is On Any Given Sunday. And the speeches that are given there, because truly my motivation comes in that inch by inch, type of improvement. If you work inch by inch and you drill inch by inch and you get the positions inch by inch and you put them all together, and then you're going to be able to have a lift that's going to be just outstanding. Because certainly when the weight is light, you can lift a lot of weight, but when the weight becomes heavy and your technique is awful, then you're going to miss the lift. So, weightlifting, like football, even like golf, is a game of inches. And Any Given Sunday is probably one of my favorite movies that depict that. And then of course Top Gun is one of the things that I really like as well. So I think I've seen Top Gun about 30 times.
That is definitely a bit above average. That's great. Do you guys ever find that people, when they're trying to get in the competition mode, that they have a tendency, or even when they come to your gym on like a Wednesday or something, they have a tendency to get like overly aroused? Do you guys have to like rein people in sometime, and just kind of say, hey, I need you to calm down, like take nice long slow breaths? And we see that all the time, like people who feel like they're true fire breathers just don't know how to control themselves at that point.
It's if you really want a good laugh, you go to a weightlifting contest and you see the group of hooligans that all kind of come around and make up those contests. And you guys are around gyms every day, and the people that you see walking in day out is part of what makes our job so great is you never know what you're going to see. So, people have weird little twerks or weird little, routines that they go through, and hell, man, you just kind of let them fly with it. And that's the cool thing about working in a gym, is that you can really do whatever the hell you want and be as weird as you fucking want, and it's not going to be that big of an issue because everyone has their own little things that they do. So personally, no, I don't. I let them roll with it and kind of just use it as a good laugh and see what happens.
Yeah, I believe the same thing, as long as it's not offensive or offending somebody, and use the example of a guy back when I lifted by the name of Phil Grapaldi, who would stalk the barbell back and forth, stalk the barbell, and he was very, very successful. Then you take a look at Ilya. Ilya chalks up. He doesn't face the crowd when he chalks up. He walks up to the barbell and he lifts it. And then after he lifts it, then he celebrates. That's his style. So everybody has their own style of motivation, and but if you get somebody I had an athlete that was an Olympian in '96, and he would come up to the gym, and my children were there, and he'd come up to the gym and drop F-bombs and that sort of thing. Well, I had to have a talk with him, and he ended up crying after my talk with him. So, and that didn't happen again, because I wasn't going to tolerate that kind of behavior in my gym when my kids are around. So, you just play it out as a coach, and you see what's going on in that environment at the time and how other people react to it, and you deal with it.
So I've got a question in line with inspiration and experience. Y'all been fortunate enough to travel the world to teach your seminar. I know, Beau, Luke, and I took your advice to go shark diving when we were down in South Africa. I'm just curious about what's your favorite place that you've traveled to for the seminar?
Well, for me, I think the best place that I would never not go back again is New Zealand. I like New Zealand. You fly into Auckland. Auckland's a nice city. You go down to Wellington. That's the capital of New Zealand. I love. But my absolute favorite place that I've ever been is Queenstown in the South Island of New Zealand. It's just spectacular.
Yeah, and I kind of based I'm lucky enough to be able to schedule my own courses, and I really try to do that around places where I can go fast and have fun. And that's a tough one too. I will dictate a course on what I got to do around it. And kind of just example of this year, I've been able to surf in Australia, surf in Indonesia, got to mountain bike in Queenstown. I got to snowboard in the Alps, got to basically do fun activities all over the world. But kind of on par as beautiful places go, I would say Banff and the Canadian Rockies are pretty far up there in the Whistler area.
Callie and I are headed to New Zealand in, I believe, October, November, so we'll definitely check out Auckland.
When me and Ben Oliver went to New Zealand, it was like the week after Coach B had been there, and we hung out with Stevie Orr, who has gotten tied in with Coach B and Beau, and he was telling us about all the amazing stuff that Coach B did. And we're like, well, how do we do that? And he's like, you got to be Coach B. And we just weren't Coach B material. We ended up doing some of like the river surfing and some of the canyoning. We did some mountain biking and stuff. But Coach B, I heard you had a great time out there.
It was truly spectacular. I mean, these guys were the greatest hosts that I could ever be blessed to have, and they took care of us, and we went on. They use a lot of the barter system down there. So his clients worked at travel agencies where they could get us a helicopter ride up into a glacier. They took us down to where the Milford Sound, where what's the movie Lord of the Rings was filmed, and it was just really spectacular. And that's my favorite place of all time.
Well, I hope we get some of the same treatment when we go there. That sounds amazing. I can't wait. So, guys, if there's any way that listeners want to get in touch with you or want to, I know you guys probably get bombarded by emails and things like that, but where can people go to learn more information about the seminar or about competitions?
Yeah. We have a CrossFit weightlifting website, so it's just CrossFitWeightlifting.com. We have a blog on there. We have workouts on there every day. My dad does a weightlifting workout. I put a CrossFit workout on there. All that stuff is free, free of charge. Our emails, we just put them out there. It's Beau at CrossFitWeightlifting.com and then Mike at CrossFitWeightlifting.com.
I prefer Mike Burgener at Mac.com is what I use. But one thing that I'll tell you, we answer all emails, and we may be slow because we're getting a lot of them, but we'll answer them all the time.
Yeah, and then as far as Facebook goes, CrossFit weightlifting trainers course, a girl by the name of Amy Taylor runs that, and I don't know where she gets half of the material that she gets, but it's all pretty good stuff, and she's pretty tied into the community and what's going on, and Same thing with the Instagram. You know, it's all social media. All the typical stuff is good resources as far as not only information but resources about what's going on in the community and, you know, all around the world.
Awesome. And this is actually going to come out next week during the games. So, you know, are you going to have a spot at the games? Are you guys going to have like a CrossFit weightlifting booth?
Yeah, we will have a booth similar to last year. We will be in the kind of SME section, so it'll be a good time. You know, we'll be doing the CrossFit experience just like we did last year. We'll have some scheduled times in where people can come in and get a little experience about what our course is all about. And you know, my pops will be down there. I'll be down there. We'll have coaches from all around the world that will be coming in and be there to help out. So it's going to be an amazing weekend, something that, you know, we also open up our home, you know, for those training sessions on Wednesdays. And, you know, just yesterday we had people from, you know, all around the world, you know, Iceland, Norway, you know, coming up to train. And, you know, we always look forward to seeing what the weekends before and after the games, you know, what kind of crowd we get up here.
Well, fantastic. You know, I look forward to seeing you guys at the games. We'll make time to come up, say hello, and hopefully you guys can stop by the CrossFit football booth. I know we're going to have some fun shenanigans going on there. But I do want to sincerely thank you guys for taking the time out of your day. I know that you guys are busy with seminars, running the site, dealing with tons and tons, I'm sure, of athletes on a regular basis. So thanks for taking the time to be on the podcast.
Cool. Now, thank you guys for having us. We appreciate it, and look forward to catching up soon.
Awesome, guys. Well, I think that just about does it. Thank you to everyone for being on, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you,
Bye.
gentlemen.
Have a good one.
Thanks a lot, gentlemen.
Bye.
Bye.
Now it's time for you to empower your performance. Get your ass to a CrossFit weightlifting seminar. The schedule can be found at www.crossfitweightlifting.com or on the main site, of course. Be sure to also add them on Facebook for updates, educational information, and competition announcements. If you'd like to contact coaches Mike or Beau Burgener, email them at their respective first names at crossfitweightlifting.com. Stay tuned to next week when the crew is reunited to talk CrossFit Games predictions and fitness celebrity sightings. Until next time, bye!